The M72 LAW, 5.5 pounds, developed in 1959, it remains in the U.S. arsenal. But the path to this concept began with a dead end, an engineering problem from the 1950s. How do you give infantry anti-tank power without losing mobility? The post-war U.S. Army found itself trapped by its own solution, the M20 Super Bazooka. It required two men, a dedicated crew. The gunner acquires the target. His loader kneels beside him, exposed. He pulls a 3.5-inch rocket, a metallic scrape as he threads the ordnance into the heavy steel breech, all under fire. Every second counts. The weapon itself was a liability, 14 pounds, unloaded, the equivalent mass of two M1 Garand rifles. Dead weight until it was fired. Then, a soldier was left carrying an empty tube, a useless piece of steel. It was a positional weapon, a relic of static warfare. But infantry combat was becoming faster, more fluid. Maneuver was everything. And the M20 was 60 inches long. The 60-inch steel tube was a tactical dead end. A new architecture was required, a system that abandoned weight for lethal simplicity. The official requirement was issued in 1956, a lightweight, disposable anti-tank weapon, carried and operated by a single soldier. The core concept came from Germany's Panzerfaust, a proven design. But American standards demanded more: greater range, superior reliability, and a completely waterproof system. Work began at Redstone Arsenal in 1959. Engineers from a company named Hess Eastern developed the key innovation: a compact solid rocket motor. It was housed inside a telescoping two-piece tube. This tube was the launcher, the carrying case, the sealed storage container. The inner tube slid backward to extend the weapon. As it locked, the front and rear sights snapped into position, automatically. No complex assembly, no batteries to fail, no moving parts to maintain under stress. A single soldier extended the tube and pulled the trigger. The engineering from Redstone Arsenal created a 66mm system, a weapon that would outlive its creators. The specifications were radical. Weight, 5.5 pounds. Cost, less than $2,000. A disposable tube, cheap, lightweight. How did this primitive design survive into modern wars? The secret was a perfect balance of mass and firepower. One operator can carry 3, even 4 M72s, instead of one modern Javelin system. This wasn't about a high-tech kill, it was about fire density. The result? A weapon that refused to die. It is 2026. The M72 is still in production, shipped by the thousands to the war in Ukraine. A weapon designed in 1959, fighting in a conflict 67 years later. The Pentagon has tried to replace the system twice. Both programs failed. The weapon's on-paper specifications were perfect, but its combat debut was a technical catastrophe. February 7, 1968, the Lang Vei Special Forces camp in South Vietnam. The defenders had 100 M72 LAWs. Approaching them, 11 Soviet PT-76 tanks. The math guaranteed victory, a 9-to-1 advantage. A Green Beret shoulders the tube. He aims at the lead tank. He squeezes the trigger. A dull click. The solid fuel motor does not ignite. He discards the weapon, grabs another. The tank grinds closer through the wire. Another click. Nothing. The failure was systemic, not isolated. Across the perimeter, LAWs were failing. Some rockets misfired. Others launched, but their detonators failed on impact. Some tubes could not be armed at all. The 66mm heat warhead was a guaranteed kill, on paper. The tanks broke through the defenses. The camp was overrun. 14 Americans were killed or listed as missing in action. The investigation revealed a catastrophic design flaw, a brutal engineering irony. Why did the warhead simply bounce off the armor? The fuse. It critically lacked the flight distance to initiate. The M72 rocket required a minimum travel distance of 33 feet to arm. Inside that radius, it was inert. The rocket would leave the tube. It would impact the steel hull of a PT-76, but without enough flight time, the fuse would not trigger detonation. The warhead's shaped charge would simply crumple against the armor, a useless dent. In the dense jungle, 33 feet was a fatal overestimation of combat distance. The weapon was fundamentally incompatible with ambush tactics. This was not an isolated incident. Across Vietnam, a second defect emerged: warheads detonating in mid-flight, prematurely, uselessly. The Army initiated a total recall of its M72 inventory. Every single unit was modified. They returned to the field with a fresh, white stenciled marking on their olive green tubes, with coupler. A small engineering fix for a massive systemic failure. But the damage was already done. It was not mechanical, it was reputational. In after-action reports, the M72 LAW was now logged as the rocket that couldn't stop tanks. The Pentagon demanded a replacement, a technological solution for Soviet armor. In the late 1970s, they launched the FGR-17 Viper program. The weapon was advanced, the goals ambitious. So why did a promising program collapse in 1982? The answer was a single spark. Testing revealed a catastrophic flaw. The operator presses the trigger. A tiny arc of static electricity jumps inside the composite launch tube. The rocket motor ignites instantly, prematurely. The sound was not a roar, just a muffled thump from within the plastic shell. The blast killed the operator. The promise was greater range and superior penetration, a modern fuse to kill the latest tanks. The reality was a weapon that killed its own user. Engineers could not defeat the static electricity problem, a fundamental physics issue. Hundreds of millions of dollars were spent on development before the program was stopped. In 1982, Congress canceled all funding for the Viper. While engineers in America battled static electricity, a different reality was unfolding. The 66mm heat round was proving its worth daily, not against tanks, against concrete. The Battle of Hue, 1968. A city of fortified temples and fixed stone walls. Viet Cong fire points were dug into solid structures, impervious to standard munitions. The M72 was aimed at a building. A jet of superplastic metal sliced through the dense material. The impact sent a cloud of concrete dust into the air. Wooden support beams splintered. The application became universal. Bunkers, fortified positions, machine gun nests carved into hillsides. Viet Cong bunkers, built from earth and logs, absorbed shrapnel. But they could not stop a focused jet of plasma. Lethality was not measured in pierced steel. It was measured in neutralized threats. Marines used it to clear mortar pits, to destroy emplacements that could not be outflanked. The target was solid. The result was predictable. The heat round punched clean through structures that stopped rifle fire cold. But the lessons of urban warfare were ignored. The Pentagon's target was Soviet armor. By 1985, with its own programs failed, the Army needed an immediate solution. How to compensate for a lack of domestic development? In 1985, the Army simply bought a license. The choice was a Swedish weapon system, the AT-4. Its US-licensed version received the designation M136. The manufacturer was the Swedish concern Bofors, a company historically specialized in heavy artillery. That background guaranteed superior ballistics. The AT-4 was heavier and more expensive than the old M72, but its lethality against modern tanks was absolute. Greater effective range, deeper armor penetration, a higher hit probability against moving targets. The M72 was declared surplus. The transition to the new system began. But the new system immediately collided with the hard physics of weight. The AT-4 was a 15-pound tube, a heavy clank of plastic and metal, strapped to an already overloaded rucksack. An infantryman's basic load already exceeded 100 pounds. Every extra 10 pounds was a critical reduction in combat mobility. Then, the numerical punch. The old M72 weighed less than 6 pounds. The math was brutal. One soldier could carry a single AT-4, or, for the same weight, 2 M72s, twice the firepower. The equation changed because the enemy changed. The threat was no longer tank formations across open ground. The new enemy moved in pickup trucks. They occupied buildings. They fought from fortified rooms. The law was never formally restored to service, but it was never formally removed either. The supply chain kept running. The tubes kept accumulating in armories, waiting. This new reality would define almost every American conflict for the next 40 years. The math of weight would soon collide with the physics of urban war. November 2004, Operation Phantom Fury. 12,000 Marines and soldiers descend on Fallujah. It becomes the largest urban battle for American forces since Hue City in 1968. A city of 300,000 turned into a fortress. Insurgents had spent months re-engineering the battlefield. They punched holes through interior walls, creating hidden passages between houses. They booby-trapped doorways. They established interlocking fields of fire that covered every street. How do you destroy an enemy who never steps outside, when the building itself is their armor? You learn to walk through walls. The expected enemy was armor. The real enemy was structural mass. Concrete. Bullets hit the thick walls with a dead, flat thud. Useless. Small arms fire was simply absorbed. Marines learned quickly. Knocking on a door was a death sentence. The building was the weapon. The only way forward was to make their own doors. To breach a concrete wall required a specific tool. The standard issue AT-4 worked, but it weighed 15 pounds. A Marine on a 12-hour patrol could only carry one. The M72 LAW weighed 5.5 pounds. A soldier could carry 3. The question became tactical arithmetic. 1 heavy shot, or 3 lighter ones for the same weight. The M72 was the answer. 25 inches collapsed, small enough to forget, until needed. Its new variants, the M72 A6 and A7, were engineered for this exact task. The warhead was no longer designed for anti-armor penetration. Its purpose was blast effect, maximum damage against structures. The failed anti-tank weapon was reborn as a master key for urban warfare. A 2010 after-action report from the 10th Mountain Division made it official. After urban combat in Afghanistan, the assessment was blunt. The M72 provided the best balance of weight to combat effectiveness. Fast to deploy, accurate at close range, light enough to carry multiples. For 20 years, the procurement system had tried to replace it. The system's tactical rebirth demanded new engineering, a new generation of capabilities for a new kind of war. But how do you fire a rocket launcher inside a room without killing the operator? The answer: M72 FFE, fire from enclosure. An operator aims from inside a tight, confined space. He fires. A fine mist of liquid countermass ejects from the rear, not a fatal jet of flame. The room fills with the smell of burnt fiberglass. The operator is untouched. Another evolution, the M72 A9, designated LASM by the British. It uses a different logic, a penetrating delay fuse. The warhead doesn't detonate on impact. It punches through the wall, then explodes, destroying personnel inside the structure. This is not the tube that failed at Langvay in 1968. The silhouette is the same. Everything else has been rebuilt. Modern production lines run on 2 continents. At Nammo's facility in Raufoss, Norway, at Nammo Tally in Arizona. The logistics are global. Canada supplied 4,500 units to Ukraine. Norway donated 5,000 from reserve stocks. Denmark contributed its own supply before formally retiring the weapon. In some sectors of the front, the war looks more like 1917 than 2024. 3 a.m. An infantryman against a wall. He needs to breach it now. The answer is not a system locked in an armory. It is the 5.5-pound tube on his shoulder. The weapon declared obsolete against Soviet armor in the 1980s found its purpose in the trenches of a new century. It outlasted 2 dedicated replacement programs, declared redundant, then reintroduced, upgraded, and shipped to the front line. The question began in 1959 at Redstone Arsenal: how to give every soldier a rocket he can carry. The answer was a telescoping fiberglass tube. Light, cheap, disposable. A single Javelin missile costs $175,000. An M72 costs a few thousand. It allows every squad to have its own portable artillery, a tool for the exact moment it is needed, not a strategic asset requiring authorization. For 66 years, this balance of cost and mass has defeated specifications. It has overruled threat assessments. It has proven that what a soldier can carry is more important than what a bureaucrat can procure. Factories in Norway and Arizona continue production.